Hello and welcome to the demo video for the estate agent buyer property matcher. This spreadsheet actually came about through my own personal experience. I've recently been doing some house hunting for myself and my family. And after contacting quite a few estate agents in the area where we're moving to, I discovered that the service that I received was actually less than adequate. I don't know if there's an industry standard or what's expected, or if I was maybe expecting too much, but I had this idea that I wanted to contact an estate agent, have a chat with them, tell them what I actually wanted, explain what we wanted in the house, and then they would come back to me and say, well, you know, we've got 5 or 6 properties or however many they have that match your criteria. Take a look at these. Not one of them actually asked me what I wanted. At most, I was asked, you know, what kind of price range are you looking for, or how many bedrooms, whatever. But I needed extra bedrooms for various things that I didn't actually need to have a bedroom. I could have had another room, and I wanted to try and explain that to people in order for them to show me the correct properties, but no one did. Most of them actually just said, they didn't even ask me what I wanted. They just said, well, can we put you on our mailing list? Can we put you on our mailing list? And then they sent me loads of properties, which I had to then filter through, go back, and then by the time I got back to them, they would say, oh, that one sold, that one sold, that one sold. And it was just a complete waste of time. And I remember I was thinking at the time that estate agents could be so much more efficient. And that's why I've actually made this tool. It's to help you, to help your clients. And I realized that maybe a lot of estate agents didn't do this kind of level of service because maybe it's too time consuming and they can't do this for each client, or each potential client, should I say, each potential buyer. So I wanted to make a spreadsheet that would make it easy for them and quick and easy, so that they can actually give that level of service to all the potential buyers, which I'm telling you now, if someone had sent this to me when I was looking, I would have been absolutely bowled over and completely, yeah, I would have been really, really chuffed with that kind of service. And it would have made me actually, in the end, I went with the estate agent that was the most helpful, and I would have gone out of my way to try and buy a property from someone had they provided this kind of service. So let me just explain to you how it works and show you it's relatively simple. I've done all the hard work with the formulas, so it's relatively simple for you to use, and show you what it produces and how you can actually do this. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the setup tab. It's got some property types here, so you can enter up to 10 property types. Obviously, don't enter duplicates, but you can enter property types so that each property you can assign to one of those types. And then a client can select multiple types that they're looking for, so that it makes sure that it gives them the right property types of what they're looking for. So you can list up to 10 property types. Again, with the areas, you can list areas. If you're covering certain postcodes, you can put the postcodes in. If you're covering certain areas, you can put the area names in, as long as it's limited to 10. If not, you can always break your zone that you do cover down into north, south, east, west, whatever the case might be, and just use those as areas. You don't have to use them, but you can list up to 10 areas as well. You can then list some defaults. You'll see later on when they get to reports what these mean. This is just what order they're sorting the lists in, and you can set a default, and you can override that for each individual prospective buyer / property. And then the sold properties as well. As a default, do you want to show sold properties, yes or no? But again, that one you can override on an individual level later on. And lastly, and I think probably one of the most useful features of this entire spreadsheet, you can list up to 40 features or criteria that you think are important to itemize that a property may or may not have. So what I mean by that is later on, for example, let's just say if it needs a bath. So if it must have a bath, for example, one of the things we were looking at is we said, well, we don't necessarily mind if it doesn't have we would like a bath shower, but it has to have a bath. So if the property, for example, has to have a bath, or has to have a fireplace, or has to have a garage, or whatever, you can list up to 40 items, because then every time you list a property, you can say whether or not they have those 40 items by just simply ticking yes or no. And then when you enter a new prospective buyer, you can go through those with them and say, does it need to have a bath? If they say it must have a bath, then you tick the bath. If they say, no, we do not want a property that has a bath, then you can cross the bath off, and then it won't include properties that have a bath. And you can then also say, for example, if a client says, well, it doesn't matter, then you just leave it blank, and then it includes both the ones with and without the bath. So these can be whatever you want them to be. You can list up to 40. Again, don't do duplicates, but you can list up to 40 criteria. You don't have to use all of them that you think are relevant, that you'd like be able to put down whether or not a property has each of those criteria, and also B, that you'd like to be able to ask the client, or if the client says to you, for example, I want to buy a house with no white goods because I want to bring all my own white goods, or someone else might say, well, actually, white goods included, whatever. You can break this down further. You can put in whatever criteria you want here. So once you've set that up, you're basically ready to go. And there are two lists, two databases, one which is a buyer list and requirements, and the other one is a property list and features. So let's start with a buyer list, and actually let's start with a property list and features. Let's start with that one. So you can enter the property address. If you've got a property code, if you've got a code, you can enter the code. Enter the link on your website. You can enter the property link for your website. I'll show you, you'll see why this is all relevant. You can sort by, you can select the sort by, which would be the sort by property report criteria, high to low, or criteria low to high. If you leave it blank, it'll use the default. You'll see what that means shortly. The listed date, enter the date the property was listed, and enter a date if it's sold. If it hasn't been sold, leave that date blank. You can enter a price. Now, in case you're wondering where I got this list from, this was all just automatically generated with random figures that I used formulas just to create random figures, so it's not going to make any sense. But anyway, enter the price of the property. Enter the property type, select which property type. And again, these are the options that you had on the intro and setup tab. You can select the area where the property is, again, from your setup. And then what you can do for the properties as well, you can say for the buyer, do they insist on a buyer not having a property to sell, yes or no, or do they insist on a cash buyer? So for argument's sake, if they don't mind, then you can just put NA. If they say that it must be a buyer who has not got a property to sell, then you select N, because then it means that it's only going to look at buyers who say that they have not got a property to sell. And the same with a cash buyer. If they want a cash buyer, select yes, because then it'll only select those who say they are a cash buyer, or no, then it'll only select those who are not a cash buyer or not applicable, in which case it'll select everybody. You can also do a number of bathrooms, reception rooms, and bedrooms. How many bathrooms does it have? How many reception rooms? How many bedrooms does it have? Because on the other sheet, you'll be able to say how many you need, and it'll match those up. And then lastly, you've got that list of all the different criteria that you filled in on the settings tab, and you can just simply tick off, does it have it? Yes or no. If it has it, simply select the check mark. If it doesn't have it, leave it blank, and then it knows about each property which of those criteria that you've predetermined it has and which of those criteria it doesn't have. You can fill in 250 properties, up to 250 properties on the sheet. You can fill in as many as you need, up to 250, and it'll keep, you can obviously update this data as you go along. If someone changes their price, you can just come in here, change the price. As soon as it's sold, put in the sold date. That's all you need to do to update your property database. The other one is a buyer list. So along the same kind of idea, you can fill in the buyer name. I've just got random names off the internet. I've got a random name generator, so these aren't real people. If they are, well, I apologize, but it's just a random generator, as is the contact number. But you can put in the buyer name, contact number, contact email address. Again, you can sort by listed date, or high to low, or low to high, or price, high to low, low to high. You'll see what I mean by that on the buyer report. Show sold properties. Do you want to show sold properties, yes or no? If you leave that blank, then it will it'll take the default that you've selected on the intro and setup tab, which is currently show sold properties no. Alternatively, you can select yes or no for a specific client. So if your default is to show them, and some client says, I don't want to see sold properties, then you can just come here and say no, and it won't show sold properties for that particular client. Same here, you can ask the buyer, property to sell. Do you have a property to sell? Yes or no. Are you a cash buyer? Yes or no. Because then when you've selected on the property list, if so, for example, the seller is saying, I don't want people who have a property to sell, then they'll be excluded from the other list. And then you can just simply come down across here for all the different properties. So these are the properties considered. Which ones do you want? Now I've just ticked all of them because I wanted to take as many options through as possible, but you can come here and you can say, well, yes to bungalow, yes to detached, maybe no to semi-detached, no to end of, or yes to end of terrace, no to terrace, whatever the case might be. And you can select whichever ones. Any that you don't select, it will not include those properties in your searches. So obviously the more you select, the better chance you have of finding the right property. You can put in a minimum price. I've left them off here for now, but you can put in a minimum price. If you don't want to go below a certain price, you can put in a maximum price. If you don't want to go above a certain price, if you leave both of these blank, it'll show everything. If you leave the minimum blank, it'll show all properties up to that max and vice versa. And then you can also put in a minimum number of bathrooms, a minimum number of reception rooms, and a minimum number of bedrooms, and then multi-purpose. Now, what this is, obviously you'll understand what bedrooms, bathrooms, receptions being things like lounges, dining rooms, family rooms, that kind of thing, and then bedrooms, self-explanatory. What I meant by multi-purpose was you may get a situation where there's someone like myself who said, well, if a house has got an extra reception room, then we don't need a third bedroom. But if it doesn't have an extra reception room, then we do need a third bedroom. So you've got that kind of a room where someone maybe wants to use as an office. And it's a case of, well, if there's an extra reception room, I don't need a bedroom. If there's not, I do. Then you can put one multi-purpose room, which will then check and see if you say, for example, two bedrooms. If you say, for example, two bedrooms and two bedrooms and two reception room, one reception room, sorry, two bedrooms and one multi-purpose. Then if it's got two reception rooms, it'll use it as a multi-purpose. So if it's got an extra bedroom, it'll use it as a multi-purpose. So you can break this down. So for argument's sake, if I wanted two bedrooms, one reception and an office, and I didn't mind if that office was reception or bedroom, then I would just put in one reception, two bedrooms and one multi-purpose. So then the spreadsheet would check if there were three bedrooms, it would go, yep, you've got your office. And if there were two receptions, it would go, yep, you've got your office. Otherwise, it becomes too restrictive. And then lastly, well, not lastly, you've got two sections here, I suppose. The first one are the acceptable areas where you prepare to look, and this will come from your settings. So you can simply tick off any that you leave blank. It will ignore, or actually, if you say yes or if you say no, then it'll ignore those particular areas. If you leave it blank, it effectively leaves them off as well. So you can say which areas you'll be looking at, which ones you aren't looking at. And then the other thing that you can do is these criteria that you filled in, the criteria, you can put in, leave it blank if it doesn't matter. Tick yes if you specifically want that criteria and want to reject anyone who doesn't have it, and then put a cross in, select a cross if you want to reject any houses that do have that criteria. So for argument's sake, for a fireplace, if you specifically want a fireplace, then tick it. If you don't mind, then leave it blank. And if you specifically will not buy a house that has a fireplace, then tick cross, and it will ignore that for this example. But obviously you would have filled in whatever criteria you want in the intro and setup tab. So those are your two databases. This one you can do a maximum of 2,500 buyers. Here down the side, it actually shows you how many times you've listed that buyer. So you may actually list a buyer more than once, a potential buyer more than once if they're looking for two properties, and then it'll tell you here that's the first one or the second one. So that's the other database. Those are the two tabs you fill in. And then what this spreadsheet does is it creates two sets of reports. So the first one is your property report, which you wouldn't send out because it's got all your prospective buyers' details on. But what you can do is you can come and select any of the properties that you've listed. It gives you the criteria. There's a link to your property. It gives you the criteria that you've selected for that particular property so that you can check that they're all correct. But then what it also does is it gives you a list of the clients whose criteria they've selected matches with this property. So if you add a new property in the market, you can straight away see who are the potential buyers. You can maybe contact them and say, I've got a new property. I'll send you your PDF, which we'll get to next, and really show that you're looking after them and that you're on top of things. You can sort by the criteria. All this is the number of criteria those clients have selected. So basically what this does is the more criteria that client selected, the more specific they are with the property search. So they're at the top of the list. Because if you've got a client down the bottom who's basically said, I want a house with 3 bedrooms, that's obviously going to be easier to find than someone who said, I want a house with 3 bedrooms, this, that, in that area with that type, or so on and so forth. So the more criteria there are, the higher up the list that they come. So that is your property report. But then there's another one called the buyer report. And this time you can actually come and select a buyer. It shows their criteria that you filled in for them. It also shows which of these selected possibilities they've got. And then below, it actually lists the properties. It lists up to 15 properties. It lists the first 15, depending on what order you've sorted them out to be listed in. So here you can see at the moment it's sorted as a listed date, high to low. You can change that per client or as a default. And then what it does is it lists the properties, the first 15. It'll tell you how many there are on a list. And in this case, there are only 3, but it'll list up to 15. And this can then be saved as a PDF. So if you're wanting to send an email to Gino, you can save this as a PDF, send it to them saying, here are your current properties that we have listed that will suit what you've asked for. And then they can click on this link and go to your website and have a look at them. Now, I'm telling you now, if someone had sent this to me, I would have been massively impressed and I would have been desperate to use them, but no one went anywhere near this level for me. And that's why I've created this, to help you as estate agents to be able to give the people the service that you feel that they should have. So yeah, this can be saved as a PDF and sent off. Property, this one I wouldn't send off, but you can use it to find prospective buyers for new properties and just keep these 2 databases up to scratch. What I would say though is once you've done these settings, especially these ones over here, I wouldn't come and change any of them. Maybe add some more on the bottom, yes. But if you change them, what will happen is on these 2 lists, this heading, let's just say for argument's sake, you changed garage to something else. This heading would simply change, but all these crosses and ticks would stay in place. So you'd have the wrong information for the wrong settings. So if you do change them, just bear that in mind. You'll need to go and change those 2 lots of data. But otherwise, get this set up at the beginning, keep these 2 databases up to date, and then you've got those very, very, very handy reports. One, to help you to know who to contact if a new property comes up, or if you want to chase on a specific property, or B, an actual report that you can save as a PDF, send it to the prospective buyer and go, that's what you're looking for. That's what we understand you want. That is what it's got. Please do get in touch with us. And it gives you them the specific links, and you're not sending them just a random or an automated email that goes out to everyone. It's something specific. So yeah, I hope that you see how that works. Just 2 things about this. Number one, if you want something simpler or more complicated, get in touch, because this is obviously a standard one that I've made. I'm happy to discuss customized ones. And the second one is if you want to buy this one, but you actually want it customized for you, so in your colors with your branding and logo and stuff, do get in touch with me as well. I'll be happy to chat about that too. Otherwise, if this is good for you and you want to buy it as it is, you can do that as well. And if you are an estate agent, if you feel like I've had a bit of a go at you about this, I don't want to be nasty. I just want to give you the tools to be able to help you. And I hope that this does just that. And I wish you all the best with your future business. Thank you very much and goodbye.